Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Lisaan-ul-Qur'an, Easier Than English, Lesson 17. In this lesson, inshallah, we'll continue to develop our knowledge of verbs. We will review first of all the verb and the different types of tenses in Arabic. Then we will take a very close look at the mudare. Now, the mudare is different from the madi, which is what we've been studying in lesson 15 and lesson 16. That is an action that has been completed. Now we're looking at the imperfect tense, which is an action that is being done or will be done. It is not yet complete, so therefore we'll call it the imperfect tense. And then we will look at how to conjugate the 14 sigha, the 14 forms of the mudare. And most importantly, we will conclude this lesson by looking at the 6 different patterns of form 1 verbs and looking at how to label them as well as how to conjugate all of them, inshallah. So a lot to cover. Let's begin with the blessed name of Allah Azza wa Jal. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
The verb, al-fi'lu. In order to correctly translate or understand a verb in Arabic, there are 3 pieces of information that we need to know. And we can tell this, inshallah, just from the way the verb is put together from the root. The first information is simply what is the root, i.e. what is the meaning of the verb? What is the action being described in this verb? Secondly thing is the doer. Each verb will have 14 forms. Each form will indicate a doer in the form of a pronoun. So we should be able to recognize that. And thirdly, again, by the way that the verb has been put together, we should be able to tell whether it is madi or whether it is mudare, i.e. an action that's not been complete, or a command form of the verb. So take this example, inshallah ta'ala. On the right hand side we have nasartu. Now, I think from previous lesson you should be able to recognize what that is. The first piece of information we know about it, that it is the 3 root letters. 3 root letters are noon, sad, and ra. The second piece of information we know about it, the doer of the verb is ana, I. Nasartu, the 2 part, it tells me it is ana. So I helped. Noon, sad, ra means to help. 2 part tells me I. And the last piece of information, of course, it is madi, nasartu, I helped. So this is how you should be working, inshallah. With the previous lesson, this 3 information should be relatively easy for you now. We need to do that, of course, with the other tenses as well as the other forms of the verb. But these 3 pieces of information are absolutely essential. There are a total of about 24,000 verbs in the Quran. For simplicity, we can group them into 2 main groups. The first group, we're going to call them group 1, which is called Mujarrad. Basically, it has only 3 root letters in the madi in this form. So for example, FATAHA, NASARA, DHARABA, SAMI'a, HASIBA, KARUMA. Only 3 root letters and no addition. So these are the Mujarrad, meaning on their own, 3 root letters. And they actually form about 15,000 verbs of the 24,000 in the Quran. I've subdivided them into 2 more categories. One is called sound verbs and the other is called non-sound verbs. Inshallah, don't worry, this will be looked at in detail in level 2. But for now, there are basically 3 root letter verbs, and there are about 15,000 of them for form 1. Form 2 to from 10 are called mazid. Mazid means additional. So in the past tense, there is additional letters along with the 3 root letters, and they're numbered 2 to 10, and they're about 8,800 times in the Quran. So you can see how frequently these are used in the Quran in terms of pattern. Of course, there are some verbs which are outside this list, but there are only a few and handful. And again, every single rule that I'm sharing with you applies to every verb in the Arabic language. We are focusing our attention on this form. So far, we looked at every possibility of the madi, meaning nasara with the fatha, 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 sami'a, fatha, kasra, fatha, and we looked at karuma, which is fatha, damma, and fatha. So you can see the different combinations there for the madi. In this lesson, we're going to continue and look at the mudare, the imperfect tense. Tense of Arabic verb. For studying Arabic verbs, really we can group them into 3. First is al-madi, the action that has been completed. This is called the perfect tense. Then we have the mudare. Mudare is an action that is not yet complete, being done or will be done, and it is called imperfect. And command is amr, or command form when you tell somebody to do something, request, order, or an appeal. So this is called amr. These are the 3 base forms of the verbs in Arabic. So again, just to remind, a perfect tense is an action that has been completed, i.e. it is done. So this is why we call it the perfect tense or al-madi in Arabic. The mudare actually covers three in English. It can cover the present habitual tense, he helps, or he is helping, or he will help. So this is the one we're going to be studying in this lesson, inshallah. And then we'll move over to look at the command form, which is called al-amru in Arabic, the command, the request, the help, the appeal, etc. And for example, here in this example, help, when I ask you to help me. So these are the three tenses of Arabic. Alhamdulillah, for form 1, we have covered the madi, and we will now look at how that translates into the mudare, the three root letters. How do they become the imperfect tense? Let's quickly look at the compare and contrast between Arabic and English verb. This is just to illustrate the major differences for our benefit. First of all, we have the example of fataha. In English, we can say he opened. But to say he is opening, he opens, or he will open, we will say yaftahu, yaftahu. To tell somebody to open, for example, open a door, I will say iftah, open. Now, for the verb for help, nasara, he helped. Yansuru covers the three tenses in English. He is helping, he helps, he will help. And unsur, help. Now, if you look at the last example, dhahaba, he went. Now, for he is going, he goes, he will go. Yadhabu, to tell somebody to go, idhab. Now, what you'll note in the Arabic, you should at least be able to recognize by now that three root letters are following through in all the different forms of the verb. There are changes, of course, in the form, but the three root letters are intact. So, fataha, noon, sad, ra, in the second example, the, ha, and ba are being followed through in all of them. And also, the other important point is that each of the tenses in Arabic has a separate shape, a pattern, a template, if you like. Whereas in English, we have the word open here, which means a command form, but he will open also will be in this form of a future tense verb. Same thing with the word help, which you can see here, help, and then we got helps and helping and so on, and he helped. With the word go, for example, here, which is he will go, but the command form will also go. But if we go to the past tense, it is changed to he went. So this is the beauty of the English language. It has different ways of doing things. But in Arabic, it is very easy to tell whether the verb is a madi, meaning a complete perfect tense, or it is a mudare, or it is a command form. Relatively very easy to tell just from the way the words are put together. Even though you may or may not know the meaning of the root, you can easily identify that this is a madi. Now, you can see that from the examples we've done, fataha, nasara, daraba, and so on, and sami'a, karuma, hasiba, and so on. You can see that there is a pattern being followed. If you see other verbs with the same pattern in any of the 14 different forms, soon you'll be able to say, that is the madi verb. I don't know what it means, but it's definitely past tense. And the doer is, for example, he, or she, or you, or I. That bit you should be able to do now, inshallah, with a little bit of practice. We will do exactly the same thing with the mudare now. We'll look at the form 1, how to identify just from the pattern of the word, whether it is madi or mudare. It will become very clear, and which one of the 14 it will fall into. So this is the task, inshallah, for you. And this will again open up the language, and particularly the Quranic Arabic for you. Baab FATAHA yaftahu. We're familiar with the template of the past tense madi. We're using fa, ain, and lam as x, y, and z in a mathematical equation. So you have three root letters, fa, ain, and lam, and they can be changed with other root letters, and depending on the verb it is. So we have fa, ain, and lam, and we know from our lesson previously that it can be u, a, or e on the middle root letter. So it can be fa'ula, fa'ila, fa'ala, etc. Now, for this verb to become the mudare, the template is very simple. Again, we have our three root letters. The first root letter, no matter what it is, will be sukun, will have a sukun on it. The third root letter will have a dhamma. So please note, first root letter will have sukun. Third root letter will have a dhamma, which is a pesh. The second root letter, which is ain, can have a dhamma, fatha, or a kasra. But in order to make that root into mudare, there has to be a sign of mudare. And in this case, for huwa, it will be ya. So the ya at the beginning tells me that this is a mudare verb, ya. And ya is known as a harf of mudare, or a sign of mudare. So this is the template of the present tense or al-mudare verb. Ya at the beginning, which is the sign for he, and then the 3 root letter template, which I've already gone through with you. Of course, the middle root letter can have combination one of the 3, fatha, dhamma, or kasra. We will now look at the first form and how it is formed with the 2 templates. The first pattern we're going to look at in Arabic, we're going to call it Fataha Yaftahu pattern, or Baab FATAHA. Baab FATAHA, he opened. This is the name of the family of verbs that will belong to this group. Now, this pattern has a unique feature. In the second root letter in the Madi, it is going to take a Fatha. We know the example of that one already. Fataha. Fataha, he opened. He opened Fataha. For the Mudare, it will take a Fatha on the middle root letter also. So it will become Yaf'alu. Yaf'alu. So if you put the 3 root letters now, change the Fa, Ain, and Lam to Fa, Ta, and Ha, what do we end up with? Yaftahu. Fataha, and the TPI sign for it is this way, eye level, pointing this way with one finger, Yaftahu. I'll go through this in detail with you now in a second, but for now, Yaftahu. Fataha, he opened. Yaftahu, he opens. Now we know the first one, which is the sigha number 1. We can form all the others by following simple steps. So let's form now the 14 forms of the verb. We already done the Madi. From the same root, we know that it belongs to the Fataha family. So the first root letters will be Fataha, middle root letter taking a Fatha. So already we've done this before in the Madi. Let's do this for practice with the exercise. Please note where the Huwa, Huma, Hum, Hiya, Huma, Hunna, Anta, Antuma, Antum, Anti, Antuma, Antunna, Ana, Nahnu. You should have mastered this by now if it followed my instruction. Please note this is my right hand and this is my left hand. So please note this, inshallah. It might be different on the screen, depends on how the camera is switching. So let's do the Madi first and then we'll go to the Mudari. Ready? This should be easy. Fataha, Fataha, Fatahu. And for the feminine we have Fatahat, Fatahata, Fatahna. And for Anta we have Fatahta, Fatahtuma, Fatahtum. Anti, Fatahti, Fatahtuma, Fatahtunna. And for Ana and Nahnu, Fatahtu, Fatahna. We went through this in detail in the previous lesson. I've explained to you all the suffixes, and you should be able to do that with any verb that forms into the pattern number 1. Now, inshallah, actually, you should be able to do it with every verb in Arabic that falls into the Madi tense. So you should be able to do that. The suffix is exactly the same. There are some complexities with weak letters. We will look at them later, inshallah. So this is your pattern for the Madi. So how do we go from the Madi to the Mudari? Remember, it has to follow the strict form. So for the Mudari, we have again the 14 pronouns, the 14 sigha. They're all numbered on the screen to make things quicker for you. So for Huwa, we're going to point with our finger, one finger this way at eye level. Please keep your hand at eye level. Why have we kept our hand at waist level when we did the Madi? Because the action is complete. You can't see it. It's already done. Whereas now the action is not yet done, will be done. So it's in front of your eyes. You keep your hand at shoulder level, at your eye level, not higher than your eye level, inshallah, and point in the same direction this way as you're talking this way. Okay, one finger for Huwa, Huma, Hum. That's easy it is. And for Hiya, Huma, Hunna. And then of course when you're talking to somebody, it will be as if they're in your eye level. So you will say Anta, Antuma, Antum. And then again Anti, Antuma, Antunna. And for I, Ana, Nahnu. Ana, Nahnu. Keep your hand at your eye level, and then inshallah you will not get confused. So this is the TPI for the Mudari. Again, I remind you, this was developed by Dr. Abdul Aziz from Understand Quran Academy, from whom I learned this. Alhamdulillah, I've successfully used it with many students, and it does work. So please use this technique and follow it thoroughly, especially when you're practicing just by reading aloud. Using the hand signs, your brain will work out first person, second person, and third person. Anyway, without further ado, let's continue with the Mudari. For the Hiya, we will say Hiya taftahu. For Huma, we will say Huma taftahani. And for Hunna, we will say Yaftahna. Yaftahna. Be careful with this one, inshallah. Let's go again one more time. Taftahu, taftahani, yaftahna. Taftahu, taftahani, yaftahna. Taftahu, taftahani, yaftahna. For Anta and its variation, there are 6 U's in Arabic, 6 U's in Arabic, only 1 U in English. So we will have 6 forms of the verb. Mudare, like we had in the Madi. Of course, 2 of them are repeated, but we will learn them in this order. This will help you remove confusion from your mind. So let's go. Now, anta is this way. You're talking to somebody at eye level. So for anta, we have taftahu. For antuma, we have taftahani. And antum taftahuna. One more time, just the verb itself. Taftahu, taftahani, taftahuna. Taftahu, taftahani, taftahuna. For anti, which is feminine, you singular, we have taftahina. For again, antuma, taftahani. For antunna, taftahna. Taftahina, taftahani, taftahna. Taftahina, taftahani, taftahna. For I and we say aftahu, naftahu. Aftahu, naftahu. Aftahu, naftahu. For I and we, ana, nahnu, we have aftahu and naftahu. Aftahu, naftahu. Aftahu, naftahu. Again, these are your 14 forms of the mudari. I have color coded them in different aspects. I will go through and explain the colors later. But for now, it's very important you rewrite them a couple of times and you memorize them. This is going to help you recognize thousands of verbs in Arabic, of course, in Quranic Arabic I'm referring to, but of course, generally in the Arabic language itself. So again, one more time, we'll go through the whole 14 of them, inshallah, using our hand signs only. I'm not translating because my focus now really isn't in getting the translation. All you need to do is put that into the English present tense format for practice, inshallah. Fataha, he opened. Yaftahu, he opens, and that will be enough for you. And of course, you know how to say you open, they open, etc. So that's easy for you. So just practice the Arabic forms. It's very important you recognize these forms from the beginning, inshallah. So let's go one more time. Yaftahu, yaftahani, yaftahuna. Taftahu, taftahani, yaftahna. Taftahu, taftahani, taftahuna. Taftahina, taftahani, taftahna. Aftahu, naftahu. On this screen now, I've shared with you the Madi and the Mudare. Now, of course, that is now familiar with you now, the terms. Madi, complete or perfect tense. Mudare, incomplete or imperfect tense. And these are all patterns for the Fataha. We're going to use this as a label. You will note that at the beginning, I started with yaftahu. Then for anta, I said taftahu. For I said aftahu. For we, I said naftahu. These ya, ta, and the hamza or a at the beginning and na are called the signs or the huruf of mudare, the signs of it being in the present and future tense. So these are prefixes that come in front of the mudare verb. In most of them, you'll see as ya, ya, ya. It can be you as well, tu, u, and na. We'll look at that later, inshallah. But ya, ta, a, na is the prefix that goes before the verb. So these are the 4. So if we go back and remember our aeroplane, if you're standing in the runway, your job is to guide the planes. So when the plane is coming towards you, you see the front. So again, this is a reminder. When you see the front of the word in mudare, that is going to remind you of what the sign of the mudare is. And from there, you can work out ya for he, ta for you, a for I, and na for we. And that's the little trick that you need to know. So ya, ta, a, na in front of the mudare is an indication of the sign of it being mudare. And of course, by the hand signs, a, na, ta, ya, you've already worked out, inshallah. So these are the signs, and it's in front of every one of the 14 forms, highlighted in red on the screen for your benefit. As far as the ending is concerned, the suffixes, don't worry about it for now. I will give you a brief explanation of that. And that's where the complexity and details of Arabic grammar or verbs come in. And we will explain that, inshallah ta'ala, in a very simple way. So for that, firstly, just know the ya, ta, a, na, and the 3 root letters. And then we have some suffixes on some of them, not all, on some of them. And I will explain what they are later on. We've gone through the pattern of fataha, yaftahu. Fataha gives you 14 other words, including fataha. Yaftahu will also give you 14 other words, including yaftahu. That is 28 words. My proposal to you that if you learn Fataha very well, Fataha and its 14 variations, Yaftahu and its 14 variations, by repeating them regularly, inshallah, by looking, of course, at the beginning, using the hand signs to reinforce the knowledge, and writing it down 3 times, please. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, like this with a gap in between. Don't write 3 times in one go. This way it will stick to your mind and your heart forever. What is the advantage of that? You can see any word which forms or conforms to the same family, same pattern, same group, and you can make 21, 28 words out of it. Let me illustrate that for you. First on the screen, you will see I have the template Fataha, Yaftahu at the top. On the right hand side, I have 3 root letters, Fa, Ain and Lam in the first example. In the bracket, I put Fa to tell you that this 3 root letter conforms to this pattern to form our past tense and our present tense, Madi and the Mudari. So using the Fataha and the Yaftahu pattern, I want you to put the same 3 root letters in exactly the same template and see what you come back with. There also, we have the second example, the, ha and ba. 3 root letters, bracket Fa tells you it follows the same pattern. And then we have Jim, Ain and Lam. And again, it follows the same pattern. So we got Fa in bracket. And lastly, we have Sad, Lam and Ha. So again, you should be able to put them in the Madi and the Mudare using Fataha, Yaftahu. And all you're doing is changing the Fataha for the 3 root letters that are on the right hand side. A simple exercise, but it hopefully will open your mind and you'll be able to see how easy it is in Arabic to go from the Madi to the Mudare as long as you know which pattern it follows. So have a go, pause the screen if you have to, and come back inshallah ta'ala after having completed these 2. You can do it in a notebook. Simply write the Madi and the Mudare using the Fataha template. Okay, let's do the first one for you. We have the root Fa, Ain and Lam. We need to put it under the same pattern as Fataha, Yaftahu. So the first one, Madi, should be very easy. Fa'ala. I hope that's easy for you, inshallah, and you can all do that. Now for the Mudare, I got to put Ya first, which is the sign of Mudare. The first root letter will have Sukun. The second root letter in this pattern has Fatha and a Dhamma at the end. So we have Fa'ala, Yaf'alu. If you know Fa'ala, you can now make the 14 forms of the Madi. Fa'ala, Fa'ala, Fa'alu, Fa'alat, etc., etc., etc. Next we have the and Ba. Again, that should be relatively easy for you. Dhahaba. And in the Mudare, we will have Ya. First root letter with Sukun. Second root letter with Fatha. Dhahaba, Yadhabu. Dhahaba, Dhahaba, Dhahabu, Dhahabat, Dhahabata, Dhahabna, Dhahabta, Dhahabtuma, Dhahabtum, etc. Your 14. Yadhabu, Yadhabani, Yadhabuna. Do all the rest of them inshallah ta'ala with a little bit of practice. So 14 plus 14, 28 words you can now make by yourself. Next we have Jim, Ain and Lam. Very, very easy. The same as Fataha. And for the Mudare we have Yaj'alu. Ja'ala, Yaj'alu. Yaj'alu, Yaj'alani, Yaj'aluna. You can do the whole 14 inshallah as soon as you know that this is the pattern it follows. Next we have Salaha. So let's do this one first. Very easy. Salaha, Yaslahu. Salaha, Yaslahu. And you can now make 14 and 14, 28 words. And that's how easy it is, brothers and sisters. All you need to do is spend a little bit of time, investment in your own study, and learn how to do the Fataha, Yaftahu 14, 14, 28. And you'll be able to form 28 words with every single root that you find in which it conforms to this pattern. Please note that not every verb will, some will. There's loads of them. And don't worry, inshallah ta'ala, I will be sharing with you the most commonly used verbs in particular patterns. I'll give you the list inshallah, don't worry, in the Quran. So you'll have hundreds and thousands. The point here is for you, I mentioned in the last lesson, buy one, get 14 free. What a great sale. Here I'm presenting to you, learn one, get 28 free. And this is the beauty of Arabic. Long as you know how the root system works, you're flying. And this is the heart of the language. We're now getting into very deep, inshallah ta'ala, knowledge. We're developing our understanding a lot better how the Arabic structures work. And now you're in a position, inshallah, as long as you know it belongs to Baab Fataha, Yaftahu, you can make 28 words. But again, I cannot say enough times until you get annoyed with me. The secret is in practice. The more you practice, the easier it will become. And the less you practice, most likely you'll watch this video and forget everything that I've said to you. This is the reality of life. We all lead very busy lives, and to retain the information, there is no other way but to practice. So the practice is as follows. Number 1, repeat Fataha, Yaftahu, the 14 and the 1428 forms as often as you can by looking first, inshallah. Once you're confident, remove the looking and do it without looking. Get somebody to test you. At least 3 times in writing, not at the same occasion. On a Monday, for example, Wednesday and a Friday, sit down on a piece of paper using the template I've shared with you, the pronoun template, and write out these verbs, the Madi and the Mudare, at least 3 times. So I'm not asking you to spend 3 hours studying, just 10 minutes on a Monday, 10 minutes on a Wednesday, 10 minutes on a Friday. Because I've taught you the hand signs, you can practice the one with just the repetition, inshallah, even from a screen or something on a piece of paper. You can practice that as often as you want. And that's all the practice you need. And this investment in your time will pay you dividends for the rest of your life and throughout your journey in Arabic understanding or study of Quran. May Allah grant all of us tawfiq to get closer and closer and develop our knowledge of understanding of the Quran. Baab NASARA. The basic template we've gone through before, that in the 3 root letters you have the fa, ain and lam. In the mudare you have the additional ya, which is the sign of it being mudare. Again, remember the plane. I'll repeatedly remind you, inshallah. So in the first pattern we looked at, we had fataha yaftahu. The first root letter is fatha and the middle root letter was taking a fatha. So fa'ala, and then we had fa'ala yaf'alu, if you want to look at the template. So here we have now another pattern. Instead of being yaf'alu, it becomes yaf'ulu. Again, X, Y, and Z. Remember that, inshallah. To remember this pattern, the template verb I've got for you is nasara. Nasara in the Madi, the second root letter takes a fatha, but in the Mudare, the second root letter takes a dhamma. So it is nasara, not yansaru, not yansiru, is yansuru. Yansuru. Everything else is exactly the same as the other 14 verbs patterns we've seen with fataha yaftahu. So the only change that is happening is the middle root letter now is taking a dhamma. So from the past tense to go to the present tense in the Nasara Baab, we need to put fatha on the middle root letter here and dhamma in the middle root letter here. And that's all we need to know. And this is a very common pattern used in Arabic as well as in the Quran. For the 3 root letters, Nun, Sad, Ra, the past tense is very easy. We've done it many, many times. So I'm not going to go through any detail with you. This is what we practiced in lesson 15. Again, 3 root letters in the Madi taking the fatha. Nasara, Nasara, Nasaru, Nasarat, Nasarata, Nasarna, Nasarta, Nasartuma, Nasartum, Nasarti, Nasartuma, Nasartunna, Nasartu, Nasarna. Now, in order to form the Mudare, we've already looked at the template. Now we need to form the Mudare in this pattern of Nasara. It will be Yansuru. If we know what the Huwa version is, which we do, it should be Yansuru. So the rest should be very easy, exactly the same as Yaftahu, Yaftahani, etc., etc., etc. So let's do that very quickly. Yansuru, and for Huma it will be Yansurani. For whom? Yansuruna. Yansuru, Yansurani, Yansuruna. Yansuru, Yansurani, Yansuruna. For here, it will be Tansuru, Tansurani, and it will be Yansurna. Tansuru, Tansurani, Yansurna. Tansuru, Tansurani, Yansurna. For Anta, let's do that one, inshallah. Tansuru, Tansurani, Tansuruna. Tansuru, Tansurani, Tansuruna. And for the Anti, it is Tansurina, Tansurani, Tansurna. Tansurina, Tansurani, Tansurna. For I and we, it's very easy. Ansuru, Nansuru. Ansuru, Nansuru. And that is your Mudare for the Baab or the pattern of Nasara, Yansuru. Again, not much different from Fataha Yaftahu, except that paying attention to the middle root letter. Everything else, the prefix, the suffix, and everything else is exactly identical. So I'm going to do it one more time for practice, inshallah. I hope and pray you're going to practice at home thoroughly. Yansuru, yansurani, yansuruna. Tansuru, tansurani, yansurna. Tansuru, tansurani, tansuruna. Tansurina, tansurani, tansurna. Ansuru, nansuru. Before we move on, there are a couple of things you probably already noticed, and I'm not trying to brush it aside, but again, we will address it later. You will note that these four are exactly the same, yet I want you to memorize them in the order. Please do that. And also you will note that this version is exactly the same. Again, don't worry about it. If you practice them with the hand signs, I will explain later how to identify them correctly, but it is exactly the same. So we have some forms that are repeated within the 14, similar what we said in the Madi, where the dual was repeated on both occasions, but here we have additional repetition. So you have very clear repetition of 3 of them being exactly identical. So you can see that here, inshallah. So just be careful with that, but memorize them in the order that I'm telling you, please. You will find that most beneficial. Again, a reminder, the ya, ta, a, and na are the signs of your mudare plane coming towards you. The action, the front will tell us what is going on with the mudare. The action is not yet complete. So again, I highlighted them there for you, showing you exactly the same as what we had in Fataha, Yaftahu, Nasara, Yansuru. And this group is called Baab NASARA. And we will use a simple noon in bracket to indicate that this particular verb or these verbs belong to that family. And that's all you need to know. And then you can form the 28 using the template that's on the screen. So remember the Sikha numbers before I mentioned that 1 to 14 is very important that you're able to identify them, because they will come in use inshallah ta'ala. When we look at the Quran, we need to be quickly able to tell, oh, okay, this one is this one, this one's that one, and so on. That's where we want to be inshallah, but we'll build that slowly. So the same exercise for you now. Nasara pattern is the most commonly used patterns of this form in the Quran. So very important that we master this one. So I have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verbs. Therefore, you have 5 roots. In the bracket, you see noon. That means they follow exactly the same pattern as Nasara, Yansuru. So for each of the 5, you can make now 28 forms. 28 times 5 is a big number. So inshallah ta'ala, you can see how easy it is. You can develop your vocabulary in Arabic. So you don't have to learn thousands and thousands of words. All you need to know is how they are formed, and only a few roots will do. So about 1800 roots are used in the Quran, I believe. I think it's less than that, and that's enough for us to know. But if you just learn 20 or 30 of them, that'll give you 70-80% of the form. So it really isn't that complex. You just need to learn the most popular ones, and then everything else will become easy through practice. So pause the video if you have to, and please complete these 2 tables for the Madi and the Mudare. Inshallah, should be relatively easy for you to do. Okay, the first one we have is Ha, Kaf, and Mim. So that should be very easy. Ha, Ka, Ma, which rhymes with Na, Sa, Ra. Now we need to make the Mudare also rhyme with Yan, Suru. So we put Ya first. Yah, Kumu. Hakama, Yahkumu. Nasara, Yansuru. Next we have Kha, Lam, and Qaf. We now need to put that into the Nasara Yansuru pattern. So the Madi should be very easy, inshallah. And the Mudare should be on the pattern of Nasara Yansuru. So it will be Yah, Lu, Hu. Khalaqa yakhluqu means to create. Khalaqa, he created. Yakhluqu, he creates. Now if I said to you, Khalaqtu, I created. Khalaqna, we created. Nasarna, nasartu. Now you can see the patterns here on the right hand side I've given you. Now you can see in the Quran, Khalaqtu, Khalaqna, Yakhluqu. These are very commonly used verbs in the Quran. So Khalaqa, Yakhluqu conforms to Nasara, Yansuru. Then we have Dhakara, which rhymes with Nasara. Dhakara means to remember, or he remembered. And the Mudare will be Yadh Kuru. I hope that's easy for you and you'll be able to do it quicker than me, inshallah, on the screen. So again, you can see now the Madi, the Mudare conforms to the Baab Nasara. Next one should be again very easy. Razaqa yarzuqu. He provided. He provided, or provision, rizq. Provision, that's where this word comes from. So he provided rizq or provision. He provided provision, probably the best translation. Yarzuqu is present and future tense. Again, you can see it. Nasara yansuru. And then we have a very beautiful verb, ayn, ba, and dal. Let's put that into the pattern first. A, ba, da. Abada. Abada, he worshipped. Ya'budu, he worships. Please take a very close look at this verb. Which surahs have you seen this? So we have ya'budu, he worships. Ta'budu, you masculine worship. Ta'budu, she worships. A'budu, I worship. Na'budu, we worship. I hope you can see all I'm changing is the ya for a'budu, I worship. Na'budu, we worship. Please open Surah Fatiha. Iyaka na'budu. Iyaka na'budu. You alone we worship. Again, look at Surah Al-Kafirun and you'll find this verb in many forms in that surah also. La a'budu. I do not worship. Ma ta'budun. That which you all worship. Conforms to the Nasara pattern. I hope inshallah ta'ala this method is encouraging you to practice, because you're going to see them again and again in the Quran. And the more of this you practice, as soon as you get to the Quran, you're instantly able to recognize verbs and their tenses, and therefore you can translate a lot quicker. Baab DHARABA. The next pattern we're going to look at is where the middle root letter in the Madi has a fatha, but the middle root letter in the Mudare does not have a fatha but a kasra. So it is not fa'ala yaf'alu or fa'ala yaf'ulu, is fa'ala yaf'ilu. And instead of being nasara yansuru with daraba, it becomes daraba yadribu. Yadribu, not yadrubu or yadrabu, all wrong. Yadribu. And that's how it is in the language. So this is another pattern, and this is called the daraba pattern. Baab DHARABA is a simple way we are going to name them. I will share with you the other ways of naming them, but this is the one that I find the most simplest. Daraba yadribu, again a very commonly used pattern in the Quran. Daraba pattern we've done in the past lesson already, so the past tense you should be, or al-madi, you should be familiar with. From daraba you can make 14 past tense or al-madi verbs in the 14 sigas with the 14 pronoun suffixes, which is exactly the same for every verb. So we have daraba, daraba, darabu, darabat, darabata, darabna, darabta, darabtuma, darabtum, darabti, darabtuma, darabtunna, darabtu, darabna. Again, these are your 14 forms in the Madi. If you know them well, inshallah, you recognize thousands and thousands of verbs which have the same pattern and shape, and again, instantly tell which one is it and which is the hidden doer, which we went through in detail in number 15. So this is for you to practice. Now we want to fill the Mudare pattern for this. So we know that it will be in the Mudare, huwa will be yadribu. Just remember that inshallah, and let's go through the pattern. When we know the huwa, then we can make all the other ones. And this is the secret. Know the huwa version number 1. For the Madi, you can make all the 14. For the Mudare, you know the huwa version, you can make all the 14. How will you know what this one is and that one is? Simply by knowing which bab it belongs to, which chapter, which group, which pattern, which family, whatever you want to call it, it belongs to. So yadribu, daraba yadribu is the main template pattern from which we will get hundreds and hundreds of other verbs conforming to. So let's do this one, inshallah ta'ala. Exactly the same. I'm sure by now I've convinced you, but let's go through it. Yadribu, yadribani, yadribuna. Yadribu, yadribani, yadribuna. For the feminine we have tadribu, tadribani, yadribna. Tadribu, tadribani, yadribna. Tadribu, tadribani, yadribna. And for anta we have tadribu, tadribani, tadribuna. For anti we have tadribina, tadribani, tadribna. So let's do the whole 6 inshallah. For quick practice we have tadribu, tadribani, tadribuna, tadribina, tadribani, tadribna. For ana and nahnu we have adribu, nadribu. Adribu, nadribu. By now, by seeing 3 patterns, Fataha, yaftahu, nasara, yansuru. Now, daraba, yadribu. I hope you can now start to recognize the prefix. The suffixes are there, exactly the same for each of the slots in your memory pigeonholes, inshallah ta'ala. I hope by using the hand signs, they're going to start sticking. Again, please note the slight change now changing the meaning. I'm going to go through it one more time for you to highlight for you these patterns. So please take a look at this one. Yadribu, adribu, tadribu. Pay attention to these. They're very commonly used in the Quran. Adribu, nadribu. And that's where the changes are. There are no suffixes in those, but there are the prefix changings. And these are the most commonly used forms in the Quran for all the verbs. So again, these are the slots you need to remember. And then we have the plurals. Tadribuna. Okay, tadribuna. And then we have for whom, we have yadribuna. So yadribuna, tadribuna. These are the most commonly used forms, and they're very easy to form. You might find the duals confusing at the beginning, but if you just learn these ones, inshallah, and they're the same for every verb, it's very, very easy. So pay attention, inshallah ta'ala. I hope you're now seeing the repetition. It looks a bit daunting. When I first looked at them, it was very, very daunting. And now, alhamdulillah, has developed this form, this method, which I found very, very easy for new students. So they don't have to learn a lot, but this layout will help them understand. And the most common ones are the ones which I just circulated for you. Again, same image, same reminder. Ya, ta, ana. Ya, ta, ana. These are the signs at the beginning of every verb in the mudare of this pattern, and this tells you the main important information that you need. And then the suffix will give you the plural. So the ya at the beginning or the ta at the beginning will indicate where it falls in the table. And this is very, very important, inshallah. And this pattern, daraba, yadribu, is again a very commonly used pattern in the Quran. Same exercise now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verbs. Please take your time and complete them. I'll go through them very quickly with you. By now, you should be able to make them on your own. Use daraba, yadribu as your template and use these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verbs and complete the madi and the mudari. So it should be really easy. Let's do the first one, inshallah, which is on our list. We have the, la, ma, daraba. So that's easy for us. And the present tense will be yadh. First one taking sukun, and the second root letter taking a kasra. Please note that yadli, and then we have the dhamma at the end. So dhalama yadlimu, he wronged. He did something wrong. He wronged in the past tense, or he wrongs. Then we have sad, ba, and ra. May Allah grant all of us lots of this. So let's see what that is. Sa, ba, ra. He was patient. The mudari form, very simple. Yas, bi, ru. So sabara, yasbiru. And you can do the 14, 14, 28. And then we have ka, sin, and ba. To earn something. Kasaba yaksibu. Kasaba yaksibu. Then we have to lie, to tell a lie. So let's do that one. Kazaba yakdhibu. Yakdhibu, he lies, he is lying, or he will lie. So yakdhibu. And kazaba, he told a lie, or he lied. Next, a, ra, fa, ya, and the second root letter taking the kasra, ya'rifu. Again, you can see how easy this is. All you got to know is what's on the right hand column, which bab these three root letters go to form the form 1 verb. And that's it. You don't need to know any more. And for each one, you got 28. So 28 times 5. Now you can make a huge number of words just by knowing how to do the 14 forms of the madi and 14 forms of the mudare for daraba, yadribu, another very, very important pattern for you to memorize. Alhamdulillah, that's all we're going to do now for part 1 of lesson 17. Otherwise, the video will be too long. I'll split it up into 2, inshallah, like I've done before. I hope you will take time to practice through the forms that we've gone through. For example, fataha, yaftahu, nasara, yansuru, daraba, yadribu. Inshallah, we'll come back in part 2 and we start looking at the details of mudari in some more detail, and as well as how to negate the verbs and few other things. So until the next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
الذي علم بالقلم